My parents tried to use me. I walked away. I never thought I'd be writing this, but my therapist suggested it might help me process everything that's happened over the past few years. So here goes. Growing up, I was what you might call the useful child. Not the golden child, that was my older brother Marcus. Not the baby who got coddled, that was my younger sister Emma. I was the middle one, the dependable one, the one who existed to make everyone else's life easier. My earliest memory of this dynamic is from when I was 7. My mom had promised to take me to the zoo for my birthday, just the two of us. I'd been counting down the days for weeks. The morning of my birthday, she sat me down at the kitchen table with that particular look on her face, the one I'd come to recognize as the prelude to disappointment. "Sweetheart," she said, not quite meeting my eyes, "Marcus has a really important soccer game today. The scout from that academy is going to be there, remember. We all need to go support him. We can do the zoo next weekend." Next weekend never came. There was always something: Marcus's games, Emma's recitals, Dad's work emergencies, Mom's migraines. I learned not to expect things. More importantly, I learned not to ask for them. School became my refuge. I threw myself into my studies because achievement was something I could control. My parents barely noticed when I made honor roll, but they noticed when I didn't finish my chores because I was studying for finals. "Education is important," my dad would say, "but family comes first. Your brother needs someone to drive him to practice." I was 12 when I started doing the family's taxes. Dad had mentioned during dinner that he was dreading tax season, and I'd recently learned about percentages and deductions in my advanced math class. I stayed up late that night reading about tax codes online, borrowed a book from the library, and presented him with a completed return the following week. He checked it over, filed it, and got a bigger refund than he'd had in years. "You're good at this," he said, patting my shoulder. It was the most direct praise I'd received in months. I glowed under it like a plant finally getting sunlight. From then on, I did the taxes every year. Then I started managing the family budget because Mom mentioned they were overspending. Then I was proofreading Emma's college essays. Then I was helping Marcus prepare for job interviews. My role in the family solidified. I was the support system, the invisible infrastructure that kept everything running. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't some tragic Cinderella figure. My parents weren't cruel. They fed me, clothed me, gave me a room of my own. They came to my high school graduation. They just never really saw me as a person with my own needs, dreams, or limits. I was a function they performed called raising a child, and I was the child who required the least maintenance, so I received the least attention. The summer before college, things came to a head in a quiet way. I'd been accepted to a great university 3 states away with a partial scholarship. I'd also been accepted to the local community college. At dinner one night, my dad cleared his throat in that way that meant he had something important to say. "We've been thinking about your college plans," he started. "With Marcus still looking for steady work and Emma starting high school, money's tight. The community college makes more sense financially. Plus, your mom's been having those health issues and she'll need help around the house." Something in me cracked that night, but I didn't show it. I'd learned long ago that emotions were inconvenient, that they made situations harder for everyone else. So I nodded. I said I understood. I said I'd think about it. Then I went to my room and made a plan. I deferred my university acceptance for a year. I told my parents I wanted to take a gap year to save money and help out. They seemed relieved. That summer, I worked 3 jobs, retail during the day, tutoring in the evenings, and freelance bookkeeping on weekends. I saved every penny I could. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I wrote essays until my fingers cramped and my eyes burned. I helped around the house. I drove Emma to her activities. I continued managing the family finances, but I was also quietly building an exit strategy. When acceptance letters came the following spring, I'd secured enough scholarships and financial aid that I could attend my dream school without burdening my parents financially. I presented it to them as a done deal, not a discussion. My mom cried a little, said something about me abandoning the family. My dad looked uncomfortable but ultimately shrugged and said, "I guess you've made up your mind." Marcus barely looked up from his phone. Emma hugged me and said she'd miss me. College was a revelation. I was surrounded by people who valued my mind, my contributions, my presence. I made friends who actually wanted to spend time with me, not because I could help them with something, but because they enjoyed my company. I joined clubs. I went to parties. I stayed up late having philosophical debates about nothing and everything. I dated briefly, awkwardly, but I dated. I also worked my ass off academically. I double majored in finance and computer science, made Dean's List every semester, and landed internships that most students would kill for. I discovered I had a knack for financial analysis and algorithmic trading systems. More than that, I discovered I had value beyond my utility to others. During those 4 years, I went home for major holidays. The visits were always the same. Within hours of arriving, I'd be roped into fixing something, debugging Mom's computer, helping Dad organize his files, tutoring Emma in calculus, reviewing Marcus's resume for the dozenth time. I did these things, but I also made sure to maintain boundaries. I had homework. I had projects. I had a life they weren't part of. They didn't ask much about that life. When I tried to share my excitement about a research project or a trip I'd taken with friends, I'd get polite nods before the conversation shifted back to family matters. It stung, but by then, I'd built up enough scar tissue that it didn't hurt the way it used to. After graduation, I landed a position at a fintech startup in San Francisco. The salary was good, really good for a fresh graduate. I moved across the country, found a tiny apartment, and threw myself into work. The startup culture was intense, but I thrived under pressure. I'd been training for it my whole life, really managing multiple demands, solving other people's problems, staying calm under stress. Within a year, I was promoted to senior analyst. Within 2 years, I was leading a team. The app we were building, a platform that used machine learning to provide personalized financial advice, started gaining serious traction. We secured major funding. The user base exploded. My stock options, which had seemed like monopoly money when I'd received them, suddenly had real value. By the time I was 26, the company went public. My shares were worth just over $2 million. I didn't tell my family the specifics. When they asked how work was going, I said good and changed the subject. I'd learned that lesson well from them. Don't share the things that matter most, because they'll either be ignored or weaponized. But somehow they found out. Maybe Emma saw something on LinkedIn. Maybe one of their friends' kids worked in tech and mentioned the company. However it happened, my phone rang on a Tuesday evening about 3 months after the IPO. It was Mom. "Honey," her voice was bright, warm, effusive in a way I hadn't heard in years. "How are you? We've been missing you so much. It's been too long since you visited." I'd been home for Christmas 3 months prior. "I'm good, Mom. How are you guys?" "Oh, getting by. Actually, that's kind of why I'm calling." Her tone shifted to something more serious. "Your father and I wanted to talk to you about something. Are you free this weekend? We thought we could fly out to see you. Our treat." Warning bells went off immediately. My parents had never visited me. Not once in the 5 years I'd lived in California. I'd always gone to them. "This weekend's not great," I said slowly. "What's going on?" "Well," she paused, and I could practically hear her recalibrating her approach. "We've been so proud of everything you've accomplished. Your father and I were talking, and we realized we never really supported your dreams the way we should have. We want to make that right." The words were pretty, but they landed wrong. My parents had never been reflective about their parenting. They'd never apologized for anything, never acknowledged any mistakes. "That's thoughtful," I said carefully. "But really, Mom, what's this about?" Another pause, then, "Okay, I'll be honest. Marcus mentioned that your company did very well. We looked into it, and honey, we had no idea you'd done so well for yourself. We're so proud of you." There it was, the truth, dressed up in pride they'd never shown before. "And," I prompted. "And well, your father's been thinking about retirement, but the market hasn't been kind to our savings. We'd been counting on Marcus to help out eventually, but he's still finding his footing. Emma's got student loans. We're family, and we thought you might want to help your parents out. Maybe set up something for our retirement." The audacity of it hit me like a physical force. They wanted me to fund their retirement. The parents who'd never prioritized my needs, never celebrated my achievements, never visited me, never really seen me. They wanted me to hand over my money. I could have gotten angry, part of me wanted to, but mostly I just felt tired. "Let me think about it," I said. "I need to go, Mom, work thing." "Oh, of course, but maybe we could still visit this weekend. It would be so nice to." "I'll call you back." I hung up and sat in my apartment for a long time, watching the fog roll over the bay. My cat, a rescue tabby named Algorithm, Al for short, jumped into my lap and started purring. I'd adopted him 6 months after moving to SF, and he'd become my first real dependent, something that needed me not for what I could do, but just because that's how care works. Over the next few days, my phone lit up with messages. Dad sent an email with a detailed breakdown of their financial situation and how much they'd need monthly for a comfortable retirement. Marcus texted asking if I was going to step up for the family. Emma sent a more thoughtful message saying she understood if I couldn't help, but that Mom was really stressed about money. I didn't respond to any of them immediately. Instead, I did what I always do when faced with a complex problem. I gathered data and analyzed it. I looked at my family's financial history, which I knew intimately from years of doing their taxes. Dad had a decent pension from his job. Mom had Social Security. They owned their house outright. They weren't wealthy, but they weren't in dire straits either. They'd just never been good at managing money, and now they saw me as the solution to their poor planning. I thought about all the times I'd asked for things, small things, reasonable things, and been told no because of budget constraints. The class trip I'd missed because it was too expensive. The laptop I'd needed for school that I'd bought myself with babysitting money. The winter coat I'd worn with a broken zipper for 2 years because it still works fine. But they'd somehow found money for Marcus's travel soccer league, for Emma's art lessons with a private tutor, for the annual fishing trip Dad took with his buddies. I wasn't bitter about it exactly. I'd long since made peace with my childhood, but I also recognized a pattern. I was expected to sacrifice, to understand, to be reasonable. Others were allowed to have needs, wants, dreams. That weekend, instead of seeing my parents, I met up with my friend Kenji for coffee. Kenji had become one of my closest friends in the city, a UX designer with a wicked sense of humor and an uncanny ability to read people. I told him everything. "So what do you want to do?" he asked after I'd finished. "I don't know, part of me thinks I should just give them something. They're my parents." "They are," he agreed, "but you don't owe them your financial security because they're bad at planning. They raised me." "They did, and you turned out great, but not really because of them, right? From what you've told me, you raised yourself." He wasn't wrong. I just don't want to regret this either way. Kenji stirred his matcha latte thoughtfully. "My grandma used to say you can't pour from an empty cup, but also you can't fill someone else's cup if they've got a hole in the bottom. Your parents have had decades to figure out retirement. They're now trying to make their emergency your responsibility." That night, I made my decision. I called my mom back the next day. "Hi, Mom, about what we discussed." "Oh, honey, yes. Have you thought about it? Your father and I were thinking maybe you could." "I'm not going to fund your retirement," I said calmly, "but I am willing to help you get on stable footing." Silence, then, "What do you mean?" I mean, I'll pay for a financial advisor to sit down with you and Dad and create a realistic retirement plan based on your actual resources. I'll cover the cost of the sessions and any planning tools you need, but I'm not going to be an ATM. But we're family. We are family, I agreed. And as family, I'm helping you find a sustainable solution, if you'd like. I can also recommend some resources for budgeting and we don't need budgeting advice from our daughter, Dad's voice cut in. He must have been on speakerphone. We need actual help. You have more money than you know what to do with, and we're struggling. You're not struggling, Dad. You're uncomfortable with the idea that you can't maintain your current lifestyle on your projected retirement income. That's different. How can you be so cold? Mom's voice had gone teary. After everything we've done for you. The question hung in the air. I could have said so many things. I could have listed every time they'd chosen my siblings over me, every sacrifice I'd been expected to make, every achievement they'd ignored. But what would be the point? I'm not being cold, I said quietly. I'm being practical. I learned that from you, actually. When I wanted to go to university, you told me to be realistic about money. When I wanted things as a kid, you taught me that resources are limited and we all have to make do. I'm applying those same lessons now. It's not the same thing at all. I think it is, though. You're upset because I'm not giving you what you want, but you're framing it as me failing in my duty as a daughter. I spent my whole childhood being told my wants didn't matter as much as everyone else's needs. I'm not doing that anymore. So you're going to let your parents struggle. You'd really be that selfish. The word stung, as it was meant to. But I'd been called worse by myself, in my own head, during years of wondering why I wasn't enough. I'm offering to help, I said, just not in the way you want. If you want to take me up on the financial advisor, let me know. I'll set it up this week. If not, I respect your decision, but I won't be discussing this again. Marcus said you'd be like this, Dad muttered. Said you'd gotten too big for your britches out there in California. Something in his tone, the dismissiveness, the assumption that my boundary was arrogance, finally cracked through my calm. Dad, when's my birthday? What, I don't your birthday? Why are we talking about? Just tell me, when's my birthday? Silence. It's in June, Mom finally said, uncertainty in her voice. July, I corrected. July 14th. I'm 26 years old. You've had 26 chances to learn my birthday. I know everyone else's. I know Marcus was born October 3rd at 6:47 a.m. because you tell the story every year about how he came so fast you almost had him in the car. I know Emma's is April 22nd because it's Earth Day and you always said she was your little Earth angel. But you don't know mine. That's not fair. I'm not trying to be cruel, I said, and I meant it. I'm just pointing out that you see me a certain way. You see someone useful, someone who helps, someone who's there when you need something. But you don't see me. You never really have. We love you. I know you do. I love you too. But love isn't the same as respect, and it's not the same as equity. I'm not angry about my childhood anymore. I've worked through that. But I'm also not going to recreate those dynamics in my adult life. I'm offering help, but on my terms. That's the boundary. Mom was crying now. Dad was silent. I felt a pang of guilt, but also something else, a sense of standing firmly on solid ground for the first time in my relationship with them. The offer stands, I said gently. Financial advisor, my treat whenever you're ready. I love you both. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. I hung up before they could respond. The next few weeks were hard. Marcus sent me a series of increasingly hostile texts accusing me of abandoning the family. Emma called, crying, asking why I was being so difficult and couldn't I just help out a little. Some cousins I barely spoke to suddenly had opinions about my obligations. I blocked Marcus after he called me a selfish bitch for the third time. I told Emma I loved her but wasn't going to discuss this anymore. I ignored the extended family. My parents didn't take me up on the financial advisor offer. Instead, they told people I'd refused to help them, painting me as the ungrateful daughter who'd forgotten where she came from. Some of that got back to me. Most of it I just didn't engage with. Here's what I did instead. I started therapy. Real, deep, consistent therapy with a psychologist who specialized in family systems and trauma. I started unpacking all the ways I'd learned to make myself small, useful, unobtrusive. I grieved for the childhood I'd wanted and never had. I worked on building my own sense of worth that wasn't tied to my productivity or usefulness. I also started dating more seriously. I'd had relationships before, but I'd always picked people who needed me more than they wanted me. The pattern was so clear in hindsight it was almost embarrassing. My therapist helped me see how I was recreating my family dynamics in romantic relationships. Then I met Sarah. Sarah was a pediatric nurse I met through a mutual friend at a dinner party. She was kind, funny, wickedly smart, and refreshingly direct. On our second date, I accidentally fell into my old pattern, offering to help her with something before she'd even finished telling me about a problem at work. She stopped mid-sentence and looked at me with this gentle, knowing expression. "Hey, I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm just venting. You can just listen, you know." It was such a small moment, but it hit me hard. Someone was explicitly telling me I didn't need to be useful to be valued. "Sorry," I said. "That's kind of my default setting." "I've noticed," she said with a smile. "You apologize a lot too. Both things we should talk about, but not tonight. Tonight, let's just enjoy this amazing pasta and you can tell me about that book you mentioned." We got serious quickly, but in a healthy way. Sarah had done her own therapy work. She'd grown up with an alcoholic parent and had learned early about boundaries and codependency. We were both people who'd been forced to grow up too fast, but we were committed to not letting our pasts dictate our futures. About 8 months into our relationship, I got another call from home. This time it was Emma. She was 20 now, in her junior year of college. "Hey," she said, her voice small. "I know you probably don't want to hear from us." "Em, I always want to hear from you. You're my sister. I just don't want to be treated like an ATM." "I know, and I get it now, I really do." She paused. "I wanted to apologize for pushing you about Mom and Dad. It wasn't fair." "What brought this on?" "I've been seeing a counselor at school, for anxiety mostly, but we've been talking about family stuff too, and—" She trailed off. "I never noticed how different they treated you, or I noticed but didn't think about it. You were just always the one who had it together, so I figured you were fine." "I'm fine now," I said, "but I wasn't always. Thank you for saying that, though, it means a lot." "Mom and Dad are still mad at you. Mucka's too, but honestly, Mucka's is mad at everyone because his life isn't going how he planned. But I wanted you to know that I love you, and I'm sorry." We talked for an hour that night. Really talked, maybe for the first time as adults. Emma told me about school, her friends, her anxiety, her dreams. I told her about Sarah, about therapy, about building a life I actually wanted instead of one I was obligated to live. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" she asked near the end of the call. "I already have," I said, and realized it was true. Forgiveness doesn't mean giving them what they want or pretending the past didn't happen. It just means I'm not carrying anger about it anymore. They did the best they could with what they had. It wasn't enough for what I needed, but that's okay now. I found what I needed elsewhere. 2 years later, Sarah and I got married. It was a small ceremony in a botanical garden, just close friends and chosen family. I invited my parents and siblings. Emma came, took a week off school to be there, and gave a toast that made me cry. Muckas sent a card but didn't attend. My parents didn't respond to the invitation at all. It hurt, but it also clarified things. They'd made their choice. I'd made mine. We were all living with the consequences. Sarah and I bought a house in Oakland with a yard big enough for the dog we adopted, A goofy golden retriever named Bucket. Long story. We hosted dinner parties. We traveled. We built a life full of people who loved us for who we were, not what we could provide. I still worked hard, but I also learned to rest. I learned that my value wasn't tied to my productivity. I learned to say no without guilt. I learned that the people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries, even when it's inconvenient for them. About 3 years after that initial phone call about funding their retirement, I got a letter from my dad. An actual physical letter, not an email or text. It was short. Dear Num Estorusk, your mother and I have been thinking a lot lately. Emma told us we should write to you. I'm not good at this kind of thing, you know that, but I wanted to say some things. We weren't the best parents to you. I can see that now. You were always so capable, so independent that we took you for granted. We leaned on you too much and supported you too little. That wasn't fair. I'm not writing to ask for anything. Emma made it clear that's not what this should be about. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. Not because of your success, though that's impressive, but because you've built a good life and you're happy. You deserve that. We'd like to meet Sarah if you're ever willing, and we'd like to try to do better if you'll let us. Love, Estorusk. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, sitting on my back porch with Bucket's head in my lap and Al sunbathing on the railing. Sarah came out and found me crying, the good kind of crying, the kind that comes with release and relief. News from home? She asked, sitting beside me. I handed her the letter. She read it, then squeezed my hand. What do you want to do? I paused, considering. I think I want to call him. Not today, maybe not this week, but soon. I want to see if this is real. And if it's not, then I have everything I need right here. She kissed my temple. Yes, you do. I did call my dad about 2 weeks later. It was awkward at first. We'd never been good at emotional honesty with each other, but we talked, really talked. He apologized more fully. I accepted, but I also maintained my boundaries. No, I wouldn't fund their retirement. No, I wouldn't resume being the family problem solver. But yes, they could visit. Yes, we could try to build something new. It's been a year since that conversation. My parents have visited twice. They're polite to Sarah, trying in their own clumsy way to get to know her. They ask about my life now, though sometimes I can tell they don't quite understand my answers. Muckas and I are civil when we're forced to interact at family events, but we'll probably never be close. Emma comes to visit every few months, and we've become genuinely close as adults. My relationship with my parents will never be what I wanted as a child. They can't give me back those years or undo the hurt, but they're trying now, in their limited way, and I'm allowing that. Not because I need their validation anymore, but because I have enough wholeness in myself to be generous. Last month, Sarah and I found out we're expecting. We're both terrified and thrilled in equal measure. I've been thinking a lot about what kind of parent I want to be, about breaking cycles and building new patterns. I know I'll make mistakes, but I also know what I won't do. I won't make my child responsible for my emotional needs. I won't take their competence for granted. I won't forget their birthday. I'll see them, really see them, as a whole person with needs, wants, dreams, and boundaries. When I told my parents about the pregnancy, my mom cried happy tears. "You're going to be such a good mother," she said. "Thank you," I replied. And then, because I'm still working on saying the hard things, I learned a lot about what I needed from my own childhood, both what I got and what I didn't get. She was quiet for a moment. "I understand," she finally said. "We really didn't do right by you, did we?" "Not always," I agreed, "but I'm okay now, better than okay." "You are," she said softly. "You really are. We're not going to have a fairy tale reconciliation. There's no Hollywood ending where everything is magically fixed, but we have something real, an honest acknowledgement of the past, respect in the present, and a cautious hope for the future. And for me personally, I have a life I built from scratch. a partner who loves me for who I am, a family I chose and one I'm creating, a career I'm proud of, a sense of self that's no longer contingent on being useful to others. Sometimes I think about that 7-year-old who didn't get her zoo trip, who learned too young that her needs came last. I wish I could go back and tell her that one day she'd have a whole life where she came first, not in a selfish way, but in a healthy one. That she'd learn the difference between being generous and being depleted. That she'd find people who saw her value without needing to use her. But I can't go back. None of us can. All we can do is move forward, set boundaries, honor our own worth, and build the lives we actually want to live. So that's what I did. I walked away from being used. I walked toward being valued. And in doing so, I walked into the life I'd always deserved. If you're reading this and you see yourself in my story, please know, you're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to build a life that prioritizes your well-being. Being family doesn't mean being a resource to be exploited. Love doesn't require self-sacrifice. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to walk away from anything that diminishes you. And when you do, you might just walk into something beautiful.